today now we'll talk about, so first we'll read some of the verses, then we'll talk about what the Vedas are, what the Upanishads are, and just the incredible world, the exciting world that is contained within these ancient Vedic texts. So we'll talk about that.
Yes, Krishna says this knowledge is the king of knowledge. So before we know the king, we have to also know the subjects.
Oh yeah, we also talked about how this king of knowledge has different qualities, right? That it is susukham. So susukham means it's always blissful. So we looked at some videos. Maybe we'll share one of those videos again.
Krishna says, fools deride me when I descend in the human form. They do not know my transcendental nature as the supreme Lord of all that be. Those who are thus bewildered are attracted by demoniac and atheistic views. In that deluded condition, their hopes for liberation, their fruitive activities, and their culture of knowledge are all defeated. So here, again, this culture of knowledge is brought out. If somebody derides Krishna and ignores his transcendental form, then this is what happens. The person becomes overcome by demoniac and atheistic views.
Actually, Prabhupada talks about, trying to understand this vast subject matter without bringing Krishna in the picture is like trying to study Hamlet without Hamlet.
So three things are basically defeated if we ignore Krishna as a person: is our hopes for liberation, perfection of our work, which is the fruitive activities, and all the culture of knowledge ultimately is meant to take us towards Krishna. Otherwise, if you neglect that aspect, then that's defeated. Then here he says, but then there are people who are not like that. They are true Mahatmas. He says, Mahatmanastu mam partha devim prakritim ashrita bhajanti ananya manaso gyatva bhutadim avayam. O son of Pritha, those who are not deluded, the great souls, are under the protection of the divine nature. They are fully engaged in devotional service because they know me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, original and inexhaustible. So, some significant words here. He says Mahatmanas. So the word Mahatma is described here. Somebody who is broad-minded, because the word Mahatma is used in many ways. But the real meaning of Mahatma is somebody who is really broad-minded in the sense that they are able to accept Krishna and surrender to him. And such persons are under Krishna's Devi Prakriti. Devi Prakriti is Krishna's spiritual nature. This is spiritual potency. And such people are protected by Krishna's divine nature. Whereas somebody who is not surrendered to Krishna, they are under Krishna's material energy. So that's the difference. And they are fully engaged in devotional service.
I was also thinking that sometimes people wonder about where Radharani is mentioned. So here, this understanding of Devi Prakriti is actually a reference to Srimati Radharani, who is actually the goddess of Bhakti and the original spiritual potency of Krishna. And so we as tiny living entities, we only have this freedom to decide or to choose between this divine energy of Krishna or the material energy of Krishna. Because sometimes this word Mahatma is used in India very commonly to denote any person that may be engaged in some welfare work or in any
even political work,
right? But here Krishna is defining what the word Mahatma means. It means someone who is under the protection of Krishna's divine energy, right? So that is the meaning of Mahatma. The other understanding of Mahatma is like someone who's very broad-minded, because right now we often hear about how sometimes people who are spiritual, they're just kind of seen as maybe conservative or people who are sort of dogmatic or maybe narrow-minded. But Mahatma really means being very liberal, very magnanimous. And so we see that in the lives of all the great personalities, they have this quality of being very magnanimous.
And the other thing about being this broad-minded is that because sometimes you see in this world that how spirituality can also become like, okay, I can just speculate. Spirituality becomes equivalent to speculation. As long as I'm just thinking like this or anything passes as spirituality. But here, what is the true spirituality is explained here, that a truly spiritual person, he accepts Krishna as the origin of everything and inexhaustible.
Also, the other understanding of this word Mahatma, so being liberal also means that one is not just satisfied in just one's own personal spiritual development. That's a very, very important aspect of spiritual life, is that, it's not just like, okay, I'm out of here, right? But the idea of actually being an instrument of compassion. And in that way, we come directly under the shelter of this divine energy.
So the quality of such Mahatmas is that, how do we know somebody is a real Mahatma? Because we know a person by their actions. So what are they doing? This is the verse that describes Satatam Kirtayanto Mam Yatantasya Dridhavata Namashantasya Mam Bhaktya Nityayukta Upasate. Always chanting my glories, endeavoring with great determination, bowing down before me, these great souls perpetually worship me with devotion. So this is the quality of being a devotee, that or a real spiritual person, that chanting Krishna's glories, they're endeavoring with great determination, bowing down before Krishna, and they worship Krishna with devotion. And then Krishna says, so then there are people who are not like that. So those are now described here, text 15 onwards. Others who engage in sacrifice by the cultivation of knowledge worship the Supreme Lord as the one without a second, as diverse in many, and in the universal form. So these are the other ways people who are not advanced as these great Mahatmas, they worship the Supreme Lord in different ways, as the in impersonal form or in the universal form, so many other forms. But it is I who am the ritual, the sacrifice, the offering to the ancestors, the healing herb, the transcendental chant. I am the butter and the fire and the offering. They're saying that although these people worship me in these different ways, they don't really know that actually I am all this that they're using to worship me.
I am the father of this universe, the mother, the support, and the grandsire. I am the object of knowledge, the purifier, and the syllable Om. I'm also the Rig, the Sama, and the Yajurveda. So we'll talk about these Vedas, but just wanted to, maybe let's read this next one and then share.
I am the goal, the sustainer, the master, the witness, the abode, the refuge, and the most dear friend. I am the creation and the annihilation, the basis of everything, the resting place, and the eternal seed.
So I guess this idea of Krishna being our mother, our father, our friend, our master, our goal, our sustainer, our abode, our refuge, the resting place, the grandsire, the grandparent, right? And that's like such a special relationship. So it just, it really brings forth this idea that all the love that we're looking for in this world is actually reposed in our relationship with Krishna. Everything that we are looking for in all these different relationships find not just its origin from Krishna, but ultimately finds its complete perfection in Krishna.
And then whatever love we get from the mother and the father and all these loving people in our life, actually just a sample of love that Krishna has put in all these personalities to give to us.
So I guess in that sense, what does it really mean for us is, in terms of feeling lonely, right? Or feeling afraid, or, feeling, just so many ways we're continuously looking for so many things. So when we find this, then that becomes our eternal resting place.
O Arjuna, I give heat and I withhold and send forth the rain. I am immortality and I am also death personified. Both spirit and matter are in me. So this verse describes people who worship him in this very indirect way, which is through the demigods.
Those who study the Vedas and drink the Soma juice, seeking the heavenly planets, worship me indirectly. Purified of sinful reactions, they take birth on the pious heavenly planet of Indra, where they enjoy godly delights. So there are some people who are also, who are not really interested in pure bhakti, right? They're interested maybe in just being able to enjoy life on the heavenly planet. But even they, ultimately, they're worshiping Krishna, though it's indirect. It's not perfect. And, and so they keep going up and down this, it's like a Ferris wheel, right? They go up and down that Ferris wheel. They take birth on the higher planet and then they come down again. See, here it goes. When they have thus exhausted.
When they have thus enjoyed vast heavenly sense pleasure and the results of their pious activities are exhausted, they return to this mortal planet again. Those who seek sense enjoyment by adhering to the principles of the three Vedas achieve only repeated birth and death. So heavenly planets, they are like just a vacation. You can think of them as a vacation spot. And we go to a vacation with some amount of money and some amount of resources. But when our resources run out, then we have to come back home. So going to the heavenly planets is like that.
So it really doesn't satisfy. And that is, it's sort of like Prabhupada uses the word, we are kind of loitering in this material world, right? Going here, going there, trying to find our home. So now, so the Vedas actually talk about how we can ultimately return back. How we can ultimately return back to our spiritual abode, and how we can redirect that love that we have within our heart to this best friend that is within each one of us. So yesterday we looked at how this is the secret of all secrets. So this Rajavidya, this knowledge that we are trying to study, is considered to be the king of all education, and how it's supremely pure. And we also looked at how it gives us direct perception. So many times, and this is something I've been, as I go through so many different videos and, our interviews and books and stuff, this is one of the greatest argument against theism, is that there is no evidence. But here, the Bhagavad-Gita is saying, and, those that practice can attest to it, that there is actually pratyakshavagamam. That means that once a person actually follows this process, they can have a direct perception of this absolute reality. So that is the ultimate evidence, is one's own direct self-perception. And then we looked at how bhakti is susukham, which means that it's, bhakti is sweet from the very beginning. It is sweet from the beginning. It's just like if you have like a donut, you take a bite out of a donut from whichever part, it's sweet. So in the same way, bhakti is all sweet. There's a very beautiful Madhurashtakam, which says that everything about Krishna is sweet. So yesterday, yesterday we watched some of these videos about how, this is actually a kirtan that we attended, many years ago. It was a wedding in our temple here, and there were, 4 or 5 Maharajas who came, and it was just the most amazing ecstatic kirtan that we've ever attended. Everybody just went crazy. This is Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. We talked about him.
Mataji, you're not sharing.
We're not sharing?
No, Mataji.
Sorry. Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay, 1 second. How do I share? 1 second.
But I think you showed it yesterday.
Yeah, we did, but there's some that didn't, so then we'll just quickly share it and then move on. This whole thing is not shared. I think this presentation is not shared, looks like. Yep. So now you can see it. We'll just quickly, This is called devotional therapy. So if any day you're feeling sad, you can just turn on this video. This is, we can also introduce you guys to these. This is Indradyumna Swami. He's an amazing, amazing devotee. And this is Radhanath Swami. This is Sachinandan Swami. That was Bhakti Tirtha Swami who left his body. We watched his video. That's Gunagrahi Maharaj. That's Lokadaksha. Right there. Anyways, it goes on. Just wanted to share that.
I can recognize Loka Prabhu.
You could or you couldn't?
I couldn't.
Oh, you couldn't, yeah.
Yes.
Well, you can recognize him by his kurta. So anyways, the word knowledge in Sanskrit, the word that is used is Veda, and Veda comes from the root word vid, which means to see. So, when we talk about how this knowledge can be perceived through direct self-perception, so Veda is knowledge that allows you to see reality, and so all of these ancient books, they are called Vedas, which is basically a book of knowledge.
Yeah, this is They are Vedic scriptures. They are not Hindu scriptures, but this is the image I found on the internet. So kind of explains the different Vedic scriptures or texts that are available. So like the 4 Vedas, they are Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Sama Veda, and Atharva. They are put under Samhita. Then we have 108 Upanishads. You can see in the left side in the green box, it shows only 13, but there are 108 Upanishads. Then you have, in the middle, you have Itihasas. Itihasas means histories. So you have Ramayana and Mahabharata. They are part of Itihasas, history. And then you have 6 philosophies. Darshan. Darshan means philosophy. You have 6 philosophies. Nyaya, which means logic. Vaisheshika, Sankhya, which is the analysis of difference between matter and spirit. Yoga, yoga philosophy, Mimamsa, and Vedanta. Vedanta is the philosophy presented by Vedas. So these are the 6 philosophies that are given in the Vedas, and it is said that any philosophy in the world actually will fall under these 6 philosophies. Then you have at the top you have Vedangas. Vedangas means again part of the Vedas, and these are like Siksha, phonetics, Vyakaran, which is grammar, geometry, Jyotish, astronomy, that comes under Vedanga, meter, Chanda, like when you sing.
Jyotish is also astrology, right?
Yeah, astrology and astronomy,
Yeah,
I guess
yeah.
both of them come under Jyotish. Then Dharma Shastras, which are given by Manu, who's the father of mankind, Yajnavalkya. Interesting one is the Upavedas. Upavedas are like the supplementary Vedas. And like Arthashastra, which is the knowledge about managing money, economics. Ayurveda.
Ayurveda, of course, we understand it's the medicine. Gandharva Veda. Dhanur Veda is archery. And Shilpa Sthapatya means, I would imagine,
Architecture.
architecture. So we
And
can,
then we have 18 Puranas on the right hand side.
so all of these constitute the ancient body of knowledge, and these are all written in Sanskrit. So we just wanted to share with you a little experience of how they chant. There's a certain meter.
That are collected in 4 Vedas, commonly referred to as books of knowledge, even though they have been transmitted orally. Veda is an anthology of sacred hymns. The Sama Veda features musical arrangements of hymns from the Rig Veda and other sources. The Yajur Veda abounds in prayers and sacrificial formulae used by priests.
Really? Yeah, we're starting fire for
The Adana Veda includes incantations and spells. Does also provide an extraordinary historical panorama of Hinduism and offer insight into the early development of several fundamental artistic, scientific, and philosophical notions, such as the concept of zero. Expressed in the elegant Vedic language, which derived from classical Sanskrit, the verses of the Vedas were traditionally chanted during sacred rituals and ceremonies and recited daily in Vedic communities. Although these texts were recorded in writing 15 centuries ago for reference purposes, their principal means of transmission has remained oral, even until today. The outstanding value of the Vedic tradition lies not only in the rich content of its oral literature, but also in the unique and ingenious techniques employed by the Brahmin priests in preserving the texts intact over thousands of years. To ensure that the sound of each word remains unaltered, practitioners are taught complex recitation techniques from childhood. These age-old techniques are based on specific speech combinations and tonal accents, which are unique ways of pronouncing each letter. In order to memorize the vast corpus of Vedic chants, the ancient prophets put together techniques for recitation by using extremely precise combinations of sounds. There are 8 models of pronunciation for Vedic chants.
It's very interesting maybe you can watch it later, you know, but it goes to show that how all of these different knowledge has been passed down orally, right? And there are techniques and not just techniques, but it's a lifestyle. It's a full culture that allows for the transmission of this knowledge. So part of it is just training given from the very beginning, which is unfortunately the situation is that it's getting less and less popular, and people, you know, in an age where knowledge is simply valued as per our capacity to get a job and what looks good on a resume, this knowledge is actually you know, is disappearing. And it's very sad, because I remember when I was growing up, I really had a desire to understand this knowledge, and I kept, whenever I would meet anybody, I would ask, like, okay, where can I get this knowledge? And it was nowhere to be found. So what Prabhupada has done is that he has taken, you know, the essence of this very ancient knowledge and and he came to the West, and he, you know, and by, you know, these books that he has written, he has basically transplanted a very ancient culture in a way that can be accessible to the modern man. So
Here is
because just in order to study Sanskrit, you need like 12 years of training. And then what to speak of being able to recite these mantras, you know, their specific tone, intonations, right? So
I guess this is many years ago when I was looking for meaning of life. I happened to come across and watched this beautiful series made by Carl Sagan. He was a professor of cosmology at Cornell. He passed away many years. And in one of the videos, he shares how, because he was searching for the origin of the universe, and then he was looking into, are there any other traditions where this concept of how the universe came into being and how it is how it is destroyed and all that is that. So after searching, he found that in the Vedic scriptures, the theory of the origin of the universe and the knowledge about how the universe goes in cycles, he found that very fascinating, and he found that resembling very closely to what the scientists are finding now. So let's hear from him a little bit.
In many cultures, the customary answer is that a god or gods created the universe out of nothing. But if we wish to pursue this question courageously, we must, of course, ask the next question. Where did? Who knows for certain? Who shall here declare it? Whence was it born? Whence came creation? The gods are later than this world's formation. Who then can know the origins of the world? None knows whence creation arose, or whether he has or has not made it, he who surveys it from the lofty skies. Only he knows, or perhaps he knows not. These words are 3,500 years old. They're taken from the Rig Veda, a collection of early Sanskrit hymns. The most sophisticated ancient cosmological ideas came from Asia, and particularly from India. Here, there's a tradition of skeptical questioning and unself-conscious humility before the great cosmic mysteries. Amidst the routine of daily life, in, say, the harvesting and winnowing of grain, people all over the world have wondered, where did the universe come from?
So the whole, you know, as we are going to now delve deeper into it and see how these ancient books of knowledge, the Vedas, and specifically we'll be talking about the Srimad Bhagavatam in a little bit later. All of these books, they talk about very advanced concepts that we think, you know, we only recently have started talking about or only recently discovered. So for example, you know, we all, you know a little bit about Ayurveda, but what's interesting is that there's even surgery mentioned in the Vedas. I also find it very interesting because I have a, you know, I have a teacher in India who, you know, who I learned Ayurveda from. And his father could actually use mantras to be able to treat diseases. And, you know, this teacher of mine, he kept requesting his father, please teach me this science. And the father said, well, in order for me to teach you this science, you have to stop using a cell phone and you have to stop Like you cannot fly in an airplane. And of course, that's not possible. So much of this knowledge is lost. We also have a friend who visited South India once, and he was telling us how there was this room which was filled with books, like rows and rows of books. And all those books were about just treatment of elephants. So there was just so much information. And even this teacher that I'm talking about, who lives in Vrindavan, he was telling me that as generations go by, then the future generations don't really know what to do with those manuscripts. So they just want to recycle. And I guess some people have actually brought him those old manuscripts. So the point being that there's so much knowledge in Ayurveda that is actually currently lost, but whatever little we have is still so powerful. But just to make this point that surgery is something that is actually, it existed in India. Shushruta is known as the father of modern surgery. And he was able to conduct many complex surgeries like cataract, artificial limbs, cesareans, fractures, and so on and so forth, even plastic surgery and brain surgeries. In fact, we once watched this documentary on Ayurveda. It was so fascinating. Oh my goodness. It was about how like they could use marma points to create the effect of anesthesia. So it was so funny. They had this goat, and so they press a certain point and the goat simply goes like unconscious, and then they press another point and the goat comes back to consciousness. So marma, I mean, we all know that marma therapy, it's kind of like acupuncture, except, that it's like not using needles, but using specific points within the body to,
So I guess the reason we are showing all these things is that sometimes people think that Vedas or this like ancient knowledge is not applicable, relevant in today's day and age, and it's like maybe primitive knowledge. But we can see that how advanced the Vedas were, and it has knowledge that we can't even touch the surface of.
And I guess just like, this knowledge, just like the sun rises in the east, but the sun does not belong to the east. So in the same way, this is knowledge that is actually, that belongs to the whole world.
Whole universe.
The whole universe. And so when we understand this, then, maybe in the future, people will do more research and try to dig this out, because otherwise this can all get lost. So there's mathematics, a lot of advanced mathematics in the Vedas.
Algebra, trigonometry, square roots, cube roots, Pythagoras theorem, quadratic equations. There are so many of these things that are mentioned in the Vedas. Vedic math.
Vedic math is actually very, very fascinating. And all of these things, even when we read the Srimad Bhagavatam, for example, there are such big numbers, right? And this was only recently, right, that people started counting in such big numbers.
Like trillions and trillions. I mean, they have names for them.
And then there is a lot of science as well. So there is, we think that atoms were only discovered recently by Dalton, but actually in the Srimad Bhagavatam, there is an understanding of the atoms and the subatomic particles. The theory of relativity is actually just kind of stated as a fact, as a matter of fact. There's a story where Lord Brahma, he goes to the king Revata, he goes to the heavenly planet to meet Lord Brahma, because he wants to find out who he should marry his daughter to. And so Lord Brahma is engaged in there's some performance going on. So he has to wait for a few seconds. And so after the performance, when Lord Brahma says, okay, what can I do for you? And when King Revat inquires, then Lord Brahma starts to laugh. He says, the few moments that you've spent here on this higher planet is equivalent to thousands and thousands and thousands of years on the Earth planet. So by the time you get back to Earth, everybody that you knew they've all gone. So again, it was just sort of understood that time is relative. And then there is calculation of eclipses, Earth's circumference, gravitation, distance to sun and other planets. So all of these things, they're actually described within the Vedic, ancient Vedic text.
Recently, many years ago, some Chinese scholars, they discovered some Sanskrit documents in Lhasa, Tibet, and which basically they were sent over to Chandigarh University near Delhi. And these documents actually contain designs for very advanced vimanas. Vimana means aircraft. And these vimanas, their method of propulsion was referred to as anti-gravitational. And it kind of based upon a system analogous to Laghima, which is a yogic siddhi, by which something can become lighter than the lightest. So very, very fascinating advanced vimanas that we can't even imagine.
Mm.
And maybe someday these designs can be implemented, and it's mentioned that how these vimanas were regularly, Bhagavatam talks a lot about these vimanas were regularly used for interplanetary travel.
Mm.
Something that we can't even imagine right now.
Mm. And then, of course, like we discussed, that there is mention. Bhagavatam, by the way, is not even a book on science. It's a Bhakti text, but it has a whole chapter which talks about how to calculate time from atom. So it says that the material manifestation's ultimate particle, which is indivisible and not formed into a body, is called the atom. It exists always as an invisible identity, even after the dissolution of all forms. The material body is but a combination of such atoms, but it is misunderstood by the common man. So as we can see that the understanding is very clear, not just the atom, but actually even subatomic particles, right? And then atomic time, when it talks about what is atomic time, is measured according to its covering a particular atomic space. That time which covers the unmanifest aggregate of atoms is called the great time.
So they were able to measure how much time it takes for the sun to pass over like 3 atoms, and they have a name for that time that is mentioned in the Bhagavatam, and then that time is multiplied. So they start from like nanoseconds and go up to micro and seconds, and then go up to years and years. So they have calculations for all the different levels of times.
And then this is another aspect where the Bhagavatam, we only recently have all these, modern technology through which we can actually see how a baby develops in the womb. But there is a very, very beautiful chapter in the Srimad Bhagavatam which talks about how the baby actually forms within the womb of the mother. So in the course of a month, the head is formed, and at the end of 2 months, the hands, feet, and other limbs take shape. By the end of 3 months, the nails, fingers, toes, body hair, bones, and skin appear, as do the organ of generation and the other apertures in the body, namely the eyes, nostrils, ears, mouth, and anus. So there's a lot of description. This whole chapter talks about right from the first night to the 9 months, and then right in the middle, there's a very beautiful section where there are prayers by the baby in the womb saying that, so just get me out of this terrible situation. When I come out, I'll worship you. I'll dedicate my life to you. But as we all know, as soon as we come out, then Maya, distracts us, and soon we forget, we start identifying by the name that we've been given. So this is Lokadaksha's favorite section. So
in the 12th canto, Sukadeva Swami is describing the future dynasties of kings that will come, and he's predicting this 5,000 years ago, and he gives the names of all the kings and their sons, and so this is just one instance where he says that a certain Brahmana, Chanakya, will betray the trust of King Nanda and his 8 sons and will destroy their dynasty. In their absence, the Mauryas will rule the world as the age of Kali continues. So this happened like 25 or 2300 years ago, when Chanakya, with the help of Chandragupta Maurya, defeated this very demoniac king called Dhanananda and killed his old sons. So this is predicted, and then the next verse talks about this Brahmana will enthrone Chandragupta, whose son will be named Varisara. He's also known as Bimbisara. The son of Varisara will be Ashokavardhana, which is the great king Ashoka, who is famous in the history of the world.
he took up Buddhism, right?
Yeah. So like this, there are many dynasties of kings are mentioned, which are you can Google them and then find out how exactly they match. The sequence of the fathers and the sons, the names matches exactly as given in the Bhagavatam.
So we already talked about the Vimanas. We don't need to watch that. There's a little,
Okay.
I guess, yeah. We don't want to spend too much time because we also want to have some time for discussion. I don't know how many more slides do we have? Can I just quickly go?
Does the water from the river Ganga?
Oh, that's it. Okay, so we'll just watch this. Yeah. So again,
Does the water from the river
there is a lot of
Ganga or
description of Ganga
have
as
special
being
self-cleansing or purifying proproperties. Now, it's
Like the
easy
Vedic
to
scriptures say,
dismiss
how Ganga comes from the feet of Lord Vishnu, and therefore it is transcendentally pure water. And anybody who takes a dip in the Ganga, they are assured of liberation. So people are always fascinated by the Ganges water, and in many studies, scientists have found.
should we watch?
Yeah.
Okay.
this theory as another push by the Hindutva brigade, but is there more to it than meets the eye? Well, NDTV science editor Pallab Bagla finds out.
For the devout, the waters of the Ganga have always been special. Now the health ministry and the Water Resources Ministry have launched a new initiative to unravel that mysterious X factor that supposedly gives Ganga Jal this special self-cleansing property. A 150 crore study has been sanctioned for this.
6 महीने के बाद हम दोबारा घोषित करेंगे कि गंगा जल के स्वास्थ्य के ऊपर क्या प्रभाव है.
Around 200 scientists gathered at the All India Institute in Kanpur have indicated that water in the Ganges carries a special load of killer viruses that attack bacteria and knock them out. Now scientists hope to identify the mysterious X factor and hope it can be used for medicinal purposes.
There's a very high concentration of bacteriophages. These are viruses that infect bacteria, and this may actually account for the purifying properties of the Ganga.
It is said that Ganga water has self-purifying properties. Not all water has that.
So, the reason why we're sharing this is because, so much of what's given in the ancient Vedic text are not verifiable. But when we see or when we understand that there is also knowledge that can be empirically verified just using material, research, then it allows us to develop, some amount of appreciation for those sections that we cannot immediately verify. We can still verify that, many of them by our own practices, but it just allows us to see that even though these books were written such a long time ago, but these are books of knowledge. And Prabhupada was very emphatic about calling them books of knowledge because they contain knowledge about matter or the material world. They also contain knowledge about the spiritual realm. In fact, this might be interesting that even talks about the appearance of Jesus. There is a book called Bhavishya Puran, and that Bhavishya Puran actually talks about where Jesus will appear, who Jesus' mother will be, what his activities will be. Then there is also the description of the appearance of Muhammad and what his activities will be. So these books are non-sectarian and they contain information about our planet, but even beyond our planet, about this universe, and even beyond that, the spiritual realm.
Like Bhagavatam, in a couple of places, it talks about appearance of Lord Buddha. And Bhagavatam was spoken 5,000 years ago, and Buddha appeared 2,500 years ago. So Bhagavatam gives great detail, like where Buddha will appear, what will be the name of his father and mother, which town he will appear in. So all these details are already given for the future.
Can you type the name of the book? So this is kind of our section here on knowledge, and that how when we have these books of knowledge and we study, like for example, the Srimad Bhagavatam, we need to talk about that. So all the Vedas that we looked at and the Puranas and the Upanishads, so what Vyasa did after writing all of this was that he realized that it's impossible for the common man, the modern man, to actually access so many books. So what he did was he wrote another book. It's called the Brahma Sutra, the Vedanta Sutra. So the Vedanta Sutra is basically the end of all the Vedic knowledge. So what's in essence? What do we, like, if we can't read all the Vedas, then what's the essence?
It's like a cheat sheet in your hand where the essence of all the Vedas you can find on one page.
And we are actually right now, we read that with Nimai, and it's so cryptic. Like we always laugh that, he obviously was not in the best mood. Like he was in this sort of more very monosyllabic mood, it's just like, and then there are commentaries on that. So then he realized that, the Vedanta Sutra would be hard to understand. So then he wrote a natural commentary on the Vedanta Sutra, explaining the Vedanta. That's what the Srimad Bhagavatam is. And so if you study the Srimad Bhagavatam, then the entire length and breadth of the Vedic knowledge, one can actually access through the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is considered to be the ripened fruit of all the Vedas. So this is actually this transcendental boat, or this great fire that can actually purify us when we immerse ourselves in this world of transcendental knowledge. So we'll pause here and see if you guys... the Srimad Bhagavatam is considered to be the literary form of Krishna. In fact, in the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam, it is asked that what happens when Krishna leaves this world 5,000 years ago? Where does religion and spirituality, where does it go to take shelter? And it says that it goes to take shelter in Srimad Bhagavatam, and that will show light to people who are lost in this dark age of Kali. It's a very, very powerful book. And for those of you who haven't had a chance to get these books, we really, this is the one area where we cannot emphasize enough. And if you feel at all inspired by what we are saying, we really request you guys to get a copy of Srimad Bhagavatam, keep it for your next generation and the generation after that. It is the best thing to actually place in your house. And you will see the transformation in your life, in your house. You'll see the transformation in the lives of your children. It is unbelievable. I mean, it's what, we actually homeschooled our son, and the Srimad Bhagavatam was a big, big part of it. So,
I had a small story regarding the Srimad Bhagavatam, if I may recite. When Jayanti was still alive, we had a couple living in Virginia, fairly elderly couple. They were very religious. She was, they sort of, and he used to be a good orator of, knowing all the mantras and stuff. And they had a set of Bhagavatam, they had all the big, major religious books, and Bhagavatam was one of them. And they had gone to India for a visit, and then when they came back, they came back because that whole they were living in an apartment complex. That apartment complex caught fire. But when they came back, they found everything was destroyed except their apartment, which had the Bhagavatam.
Wow.
And so that's the power of Bhagavatam.
yeah, Bhagavatam is actually, like Delia just pointed out, it is the literary incarnation of Krishna. So having the Bhagavatam means that you have access to the Ganga and the Yamuna and all the great personalities. And one can immediately see the effect of the Srimad Bhagavatam. It's very potent. Actually, the place that we come from, Assam, it's a place where, there are these namghar, or places where the kirtan, all the marriages actually happen. There are no temples there traditionally. And so the marriages would actually happen in front of Srimad Bhagavatam. And whatever offerings they would make would be actually to the Srimad Bhagavatam. So it's, it's not different. So anyways, this is something that we'll keep bringing up, and keep encouraging all of you to, see if you'd like to get a set and place it in your house. I still remember when I was a kid, somebody, my parents, my grandparents were not particularly interested, but we had a set of Srimad Bhagavatam that was actually gifted by some, devotees who were traveling through. We had a, like a lodging place. And so somebody, out of their kindness of their heart, gave it to my grandparents. And my grandparents didn't know what to do with them. So they just placed it in like a bookshelf. And so I remember when I was a little kid, I used to constantly keep going and keep staring at those books, thinking, what are these books? Like, they look so amazing, but they were in Hindi, so I couldn't understand. Plus, I'm sure I would not have understood anyways, but I was very, very fascinated. So we don't know what kind of impressions, it might create for the next generation. Yeah, it is relatively inexpensive for the number of volume that they are. And quality, the quality of the printing,
Beautiful pictures.
Very, very beautiful pictures. Yeah, they are amazing. And we don't realize this is actually the gift of the printing press. In the past, even when Lord Chaitanya appeared, like, people actually had to get each copy handwritten in order to get, like, it was so hard and so rare. So we are very fortunate now in this age. So anyways, questions, comments, reflections?
Hare Krishna.
Yes, Hare Krishna.
Hi, this is Ashley.
Yes.
I guess my reflections is, just amazed at how much information that you can really obtain through the Vedas, and just looking at it, like it's so many different aspects that just branch off from the truth, and I like the fact that it all sums up to the devotional service to Krishna, but I also admire the fact that he personifies himself through this material nature and all of these avenues. It's almost like he understands us because he knows that we're diverse, so that he comes in all of these various forms so that nobody can be exempt from him. It's like he's everywhere, no matter what angle you're coming from, no matter what part of the world you're coming from, you can run across him and obtain and get to the understanding of the pure devotional service of him through all of these different avenues. And I just find that amazing.
That's beautiful, Ashley. It's so well put. And it's actually even, you know, Krishna and then there's Lord Chaitanya. Because, you know, for the longest time, this knowledge was trapped, you know, and it was kept sort of in a very confidential way amongst the elite group of brahmanas, right? And Lord Chaitanya came and he broke that storehouse. And he said, this needs to be distributed. And this does not just need to be distributed in India, but it needs to go out of India and it needs to go to every town and village. And that's how we have this knowledge here. Otherwise, you know, this knowledge would not be available to us. So we are really, really fortunate that, you know, that there has been, and, you know, I think we've talked a little bit about it, there's been great effort made so that this knowledge can be made available to us. And so now that we are receiving this knowledge, we become a link in that great effort too. And so, you know, we become the bearer of this knowledge, and now it becomes our sort of, this is the one way we can actually express our gratitude is by passing on this knowledge, you know, because it has been, it's like a, you know, like you have these torches, like, you know, they do these relay races. So,
Olympics, taking the torch down thousands of miles.
Right, and then it's passed on, and then it becomes the responsibility of the next person to pass on that torch to the next person. So this is how this knowledge can stay alive, because as the world continues on, this knowledge will be more and more needed in this world. And so to the extent that we can first assimilate it, apply it, and then we can share it, to that extent will be actually this would be the best way to preserve this knowledge, is by propagation. And I can attest to that, because in Ayurveda, I've actually spoken to a couple of Ayurvedic, very, very knowledgeable Ayurvedic practitioners who have received that knowledge thousands of years, since they also have a lineage which goes back like thousands of years. But the challenge is that they would only share that knowledge with their own children. They are not willing to share that knowledge with anyone who is not part of their bloodline. So I shared this. I said, if you don't share this knowledge, then this knowledge will die with each generation. And it has, you know, so much knowledge is lost because people are not willing to give it, you know, and they want to hoard that knowledge. So to the extent that we can learn how to propagate this knowledge, that's what will actually allow us to keep this knowledge, you know, chain going.
In fact, Prabhupada says that if you don't share the knowledge, you're committing violence.
Yeah. Yes. Anybody else? Naji, thoughts from you?
Oh, I was just wondering about the airplanes. So
how did I know that,
Naji? So it involves the yogic city of lighter than the lightest. So I was wondering, like, someone has to meditate, you know, in order to make the airplanes fly. But do they meditate during the manufacture of the airplanes and then embed the lightness in it? Or does the pilot actually have to meditate while flying the airplane? And does he have to maintain a perfect trance? Otherwise, the airplane will fall down.
That'd be funny. I wouldn't want to be in such an airplane.
No, it just compares it to Laghima Siddhi, which doesn't mean that they were using Laghima Siddhi to manufacture the airplanes or to fly them, but they were using mechanical principles that basically mimicked the power of this Laghima Siddhi, and they could achieve this anti-gravitational force. I mean, those details, I don't know how they achieved that, but
maybe we can forward you that article. Maybe you'll understand it better.
Yeah.
So that means that it would be in the power, perhaps, of like modern scientists to manufacture it. Because I was thinking, like, it's really hard to find advanced yogis these days, and no one could.
No, they were not using yoga. Of course, they could use mantras to fly the planes, but these were mechanical designs, right?
But then, why were they deriving their inspiration from the ancient Vedic texts?
No, this Vedic text, they have the designs. Right?
Oh, they have the designs. Okay.
The
physical designs.
That's very interesting. I mean, that would be worth pursuing. It can be
next career option for you.
Maybe, yeah. I'll become an airplane manufacturer. I didn't think it. I actually have a neighbor who helps design airplanes.
Oh, really? Yeah, maybe we can take the document and you can take a deeper look at that.
You can call it Yogic Airlines.
Yes.
That's funny. Anybody else? Rajesh ji, Sindhu, Raghu, Stefano. Even the older group, Radhika Naam and Vishala, Bhakti Lata.
Hare Krishna.
Yes,
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.
What is the use of knowledge for liberation? Because the first thing we know from knowledge that we are not the body. But there are so many pandits, so many people who are mastered in those texts, but they don't realize that they are not the body.
Yeah.
That's the misuse of Vedic knowledge. It's called Ketava Dharma. Ketava Dharma means cheating religion. So when people use the knowledge in the Vedas for their own personal profit, they don't really realize this basic difference between body and soul, but they use this knowledge just to fill their bellies. Prabhupada says that, Prabhupada's guru said that, like in the temple, you use the Shaligram Shila, which is like a deity of Krishna in this stone form. You use the Shaligram Shila to crack open a walnut, basically. So it's like using the knowledge of the Vedas to fill your belly. And that's what we see in India. And that's what makes people who are intelligent to lose faith in the Vedic scriptures.
Also, I was thinking that Krishna says that how this knowledge is the secret of all secrets and it is most confidential. So this is what it means, that something could be right in front of our eyes and yet we may have no understanding, and it's there. I mean, all these pandits and brahmanas, because their motive is impure and they're just simply doing it to maintain their bellies. So even though they read these texts, but they have no clue. Like, you see this in India, they do Bhagavad Saptas. And my father always tells me that, they have no idea. They just talk about some Leela of Krishna dancing with the gopis, and that's the extent of their knowledge. Also, they also don't want to disturb their patrons too much. So Prabhupada says the cheater and the cheated, so they know that if they speak anything else, because see, when knowledge, when you're dependent on earning a living through that knowledge, then the Brahmanas would never charge any money for the knowledge that they gave, right? Because this is actually a very beautiful point that even in Chanakya's time, Chanakya refused to live within the boundaries of Chandragupta's kingdom, because he said, if I live within your boundaries,
I accept a salary
and if I accept a salary from you, then I will not be able to speak the truth, because now my livelihood is dependent on you. So he chose to live outside in a hut and not accept any money. So that's why the Brahmanas, they never accepted any remuneration or money, because once you do that, then you become, now you have to please those people. So most of these Brahmanas or Pandits, they are dependent on their patrons for their livelihood. So they know what will please them.
Hare Krishna, Mataji and Prabhuji.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was thinking that knowledge of a matter about an external world, it's unlimited and it's always, from my childhood, I have been taking this knowledge. It's frustrating and it's only to enjoy the matter, and it gives you a misery as well as an enjoyment. Enjoyment in the sense that I'm able to earn something because of this knowledge, so survive in it with that knowledge. But the misery, because I have to study, I have to give exams, even though I don't like it, I have to go on. And it sometimes gives me mental satisfaction also, because I'm able to use it to utilize my intellect for this external knowledge. But when I go to spiritual knowledge, it's about your internal things, how human internal emotions, love, and all those things work, and understanding them better and better. And then how do we utilize this knowledge to serve Krishna? It's more satisfying, calms you down, it's always pleasurable. That's what my observation is about these two different aspects of a knowledge. One an external knowledge, and one is an internal knowledge about ourselves and then God.
Very nice, thank you. And I guess this is the beauty of the Vedic knowledge, that even the so-called knowledge of the material world, that the Vedas actually talk about in great detail, whether it's archery or Ayurveda or astrology or economics, whatever it talks about, even all of that knowledge, because it is in relationship to the ultimate goal. Like in Ayurveda, the first couple of chapters that we studied, I was blown over because I thought, oh my goodness, this is Bhagavad-Gita, second chapter, because it defined disease as basically forgetfulness of one's identity as a spirit soul. And I was thinking, oh my God, so everything kind of, it's like puzzle pieces, right? They all come together. And so that is the beauty. Like I learned Hindustani classical music when I was growing up. And, whatever music we learned was all in relationship to the ultimate goal of glorifying Krishna.
Like all dance forms, all art forms, even in the Vedas, the purpose of the Vedas is not to just give knowledge for the sake of, the knowledge is given so that we can have some enjoyment in this world, because that's why we came here for. But at the same time, use the resources of this world and use our talents in somehow connecting back to Krishna and pleasing him. So all the Upavedas or everything else you see, it's the purpose is to somehow connect the reader back to the Supreme in some way, some form or the other.
So very nice.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Yeah, Shweta, Hare Krishna.
Actually, I was just thinking, like, whenever we attend, many religious ceremonies, you can say, or Bhagavad happening in, here in my town and all. So whenever there is, more show off kind of thing, then I suddenly feel disconnected there. And I wonder how, like, everyone is enjoying, but I'm not feeling connected. So I don't know, maybe I'm wrong or...
Yeah, and this is exactly why, because this is true for, anybody who's looking for some deeper understanding. It's very dissatisfying because, it becomes like a big show. It's a big show in town and everybody gathers together and they'll cry and they'll sing and they'll dance. It's just, there is no transmission of authentic knowledge, right? And people gather.
That's what I was saying.
Yeah.
It's like
there is much more to it, but it's only the show off that is left.
Yes, exactly. And so that's, this is why, this knowledge has to be studied and then has to be transmitted, because people are actually thirsty for the real knowledge. And I know I was, and I know Loka was. Loka, in fact, rejected when he was growing up. He saw this in the name of spirituality, in the name of religion. So he went the exact opposite way. And basically, just completely, he said, this is all, not real. And then, so he had to leave it to come back to it, So I think it happens to so many of us.
Especially when your experience is very valid, Shweta, that especially when you're hearing about God or topics about God with people who actually don't believe in God, or the speaker himself doesn't believe really, and the audience also doesn't believe, then what happens is that topic becomes very difficult to tolerate, because you're hearing this in the presence of non-believers. Whereas when you hear topics about Krishna in the association of devotees, then it becomes millions of times more sweet. And just like right now, when we are discussing about topics of Krishna with each other, everything is very sweet. So, and in those ceremonies or functions, then they spend millions or like thousands of dollars, and so much pomp and show, but there is no substance there.
And again, it's the purpose is to collect money. So when those people come to speak, right? I mean, I should not say for every single person, but for the most part, they are charging a lot of money, and this is their way of, earning a livelihood. So anyways, bottom line is that, this is why we can be so grateful to this chain of teachers, and especially Prabhupada, who took the effort to stay up all night to translate these books from Sanskrit to English and then bring it on a cargo ship to America, sit under a tree in Bowery, which was like not a place that any gentleman would like to spend his time, and, single-handedly take the task of distributing this knowledge. So that,
like, how many of us can,
at the age of 70,
at the age of 70 or at the age of 20 even, every single night from say 10 o'clock at night till 4 o'clock in the morning, you can sit up and read commentaries or do whatever, and then write books every single night. And
then during the day.
And during the day, like traveling and preaching and then managing the whole worldwide movement. I mean, if we have a late night for 1 or 2 or 3 nights, then our body is completely gone. It takes like a few days to recover from that. But Prabhupada did this year in and year out, whether he was sick or not sick, traveling or not traveling. So this is something that impossible.
All right, so thank you. So tomorrow is actually a very special day, and we are really excited because we want to do, and we are hoping we'll be able to do, at least we are definitely going to tell you this very sweet story. So our entire discussion tomorrow will be on Bhakti. What is Bhakti and what are the different aspects of Bhakti, how Bhakti starts, different stages of Bhakti. And then we'll end with this story, which shows how, how one can attain Bhakti. And it's a very, very sweet story. And if we are fortunate enough, we'll do it in the form of Leela Kirtan, but we'll see how it goes. So look forward to it. So I think Delia had a question there. Let me just see if we can address it real quick. That why is the Srimad Bhagavatam also called the Bhagavad Purana? I think mind knowledge has to lead you to heart knowledge, and then give up mind knowledge's supremacy. Very nice. Yes. So why is it called Bhagavad Purana? It's a Purana. It's, you want to talk about it? The Purana is basically, it means history.
Yeah, Purana means something, history of very, Puran means old, basically something old. So knowledge of the very old times. And Purana is a collection of real stories, not fictitious stories, but real stories of devotees and their activities from different universes at different periods of time. So it's not chronological, and neither it's geographical. It's scattered from all over the place, but it brings out. The Bhagavad Purana is just another name for Srimad Bhagavatam. Because it is one of the Puranas, so that's why it's called Bhagavad Purana.
And it deals with Krishna, and it deals with all his devotees, who are also called Bhagavatas. So there is the person Bhagavata, and there is a book Bhagavata. So the person Bhagavata is a person who lives by the principles of the book Bhagavata. So Bhagavata means anything pertaining to the Supreme Person. That's Bhagavata. All right, so thank you so much. Not that we want to leave you. It's so nice. I'm so happy to see all of you, and we'll see you guys tomorrow. Friday night is going to be our storytelling night. You have something?
No, I'm going to stop this.
Okay.